Hello and welcome, everybody. It's another episode of Africa's a Country Talk, streaming as always every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central African time. If you don't know who I am, I'm William Shoki, and I'm streaming from Cape Town, South Africa.
And I'm Sean Jacobs, and I'm streaming from Cape Town, South Africa. This is real. No jokes.
This is real.
So
and
watch out what's going to happen right now.
Boom.
Look at that.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Who's that? Who's this?
Because it's still COVID protocols, we're not going to try and like high five
we can't touch.
We're going to go like this. You see, this is real. This is real. Yep.
But we're in the same city. We're in the same room. Africa's a Country Talk we started in June last year, and we've done 45 episodes. This is the 46th one. And this is not only the first time we're doing the show together, Correct. It's the first time we are meeting. Finishing club,
which is also something about Africa. It's actually this is a kind of something about Africa as a country, in which you historically this is what this website does. It's a whole bunch of people that have worked together that they've never met, often in person. I've worked with people as copy editors, as senior editors, as just people as contributing editors, editorial board, and often I've never met them. I would meet them sometimes at a conference, etc. So this is great. There was a weird. We were like, hold up. We know each other so well, kind of, but we've never met.
I was very interested to see just how tall Sean was, because the entire time the image of Sean I formed in my mind as I could discern. I was like, okay, this guy's at least above average height for South Africans.
So I just wanted to.
No. You definitely are above average height. I just had to discern to what extent. I was like, are you super tall? Are you tall?
I'm not super
tall. You're tall, but you're not super tall.
No, I'm not the 2 meters yet. I'm not 6 feet yet. I think my son will be taller than 6 feet. Yeah, but yeah, I'm just a regular person. I'm also from the Cape Flats. I've had some fun times this week where there are people who would ask me for something, or I'm asking for something, and they would say, actually, I went for a COVID test, and I hope the nurse, or I don't know if she was a health practitioner, is listening, because I don't want to misrepresent her. But I got into a relative tested positive for COVID, so I had to go and get a test. So first I went for a rapid. Shout out to my friend Herman Wasserman, who's been a nice host with his family. So he went with me. I got there, and when I got into and kind of registered, I sat down, I waited, I went into the room, and I don't know how it came up. She said to me, "What is your name?" And I think she may have said, "Where did you go to high school?" She said, "Oh, you say you're from Cape Town? Can you say Aware?" I was like, Aware? And then she said, "What high school did you go to?" But there was I could see that she was like, "Nah, you're not from Cape Town." I'm like, "No, I'm like, so I'm just I just spoke a little bit of the local sort of colloquial Afrikaans. So yeah, it's been nice being back in South Africa, being home. We were joking before the program with Alex Hodge, is one of our guests today, about eating kusistas, and there was a little thing here about, we're not going to go into that today, kusistas versus koeksisters, which is two different kind of things. But I was having kusistas. I was having a proper braai, like a barbecue, a South African barbecue, and somebody wrote on Instagram, when I posted a photo of it, where are the baked beans? I was like, come on, leave me alone. But in any case, it's really great to see Will. I don't know, is there anything you want to say about the fact of meeting?
Yeah,
apart from height and other stuff.
I just wanna mention the space we're in right now.
Yes.
Being gracefully hosted by the Alternative Information Development Center, which is a think tank based in Cape Town, started in 1996 as South Africa's post-democratic transition began. And it's a think tank which is devoted to the work of thinking of political alternatives, crafting the policy visions that can realize those alternatives, and linking up with social movements and trade unions that are organizing for those alternatives on the ground. So it's been doing incredible work throughout the years. The Alternative Information Development Center, if you don't know, is the think tank that supports Amandla magazine, which you can see on your screen there. Amandla is a local South African left-wing publication, which Africa as a Country has a partnership with. You can see the latest issue there, which is devoted to the labor movement, questioning whether or not it's lost its way, whether or not the trade union form still serves the way labor is organized in contemporary South Africa. And we've got a partnership with them. We republish articles from the magazine. And yeah, the AIDC is an incredible group of people, an incredible think tank, and one of those organizations that have been integral to progressive politics in South Africa for the last 25 or so years. And we're in their wonderful library, in their offices here in the Observatory in Cape Town. There's lots of great books here. They're both catching our eyes as we stream, as well as supporting our computers as we stream. So just shout out to the Alternative Information Development Center. And hopefully this is something we can do more frequently and be in this beautiful space again.
Yep. So we've got a lot to talk about today. We have we were just gonna rap about these things, but we thought in the end it might be useful to bring in two people to join us for today for the show. And we're going to talk about two big subjects. One is we're in South Africa, and it's been, for me especially, coming here the day so hold on, two topics, one South Africa, and the second one we're going to talk about the Euros. The Euros. What do you say, the Euros?
The Euros, yeah.
The Euros. My accent is
Championships,
becoming good again. The European Championship, which is from the other night, won by Italy, with England in the final. And so first we can talk about South Africa and Alex Hodge, who is part of AIDC. And what is Alex doing now these days? He's a graduate student.
We'll let her tell us.
We'll let her tell us. And then we have Peter Dwyer, who's a activist, an academic, socialist. Let Peter maybe bring out all the nuances of what his own politics are. But he'll join us later on. And he'll talk to us about the kind of the politics of football and the European Championships, because I know Peter has his own particular relationship with the English national team. But yeah, so we'll soon bring on Alex. But just by introduction, I just wanted to mention that. So I came to South Africa basically the day that Ramaphosa announced that South Africa was going to go to level 4. That night, I was getting on a flight. So I was waiting all day to see whether or not things would change. And I was a little worried that they might say that they're shutting down the country, but instead they just went for level 4. I'm fully vaccinated. So I arrived here, and then by the first week was great, but the beginning of the second week, I moved to a friend's house. But around that time, I think my brother got infected with COVID. And so I then took a test on Friday. He took a test on Saturday. I tested negative, which is probably more proof that the vaccine is working. And he tested positive. So he started isolating. So I took both tests. First, I took the rapid, and then I took the PCR test. But the point about just mentioning the test, I also learned a little bit about how difficult and cumbersome it could be to take a test in South Africa. Because in the US now, even though the US doesn't have a public healthcare system, with COVID, they turned the whole system into a public healthcare system. And you can take a COVID test as long as you make an appointment at any public health facility. Like your local city council, health department, you can go in there and take a COVID test as many times as you want. And then they started vaccinating people, I would say roughly at the end of February, and I was fully vaccinated from the end of March. So, to sort of come here, it's been an interesting experience of sort of stepping back and sort of having to realize that there's still a lot that needed to be done around vaccinations. But yeah, people generally, I feel, are careful here, wearing masks. We made sure that before we do the program, we go through a bunch of protocols to ensure that nobody gets infected and so on. But yeah, it's been an interesting experience. But here's the part, and then we'll bring on Alex, and maybe Will wants to say something else too before we get to Alex. But the other part of the story was Jacob Zuma. The Wednesday after I arrived, so I think I arrived on the Sunday, on the Wednesday, Jacob Zuma, there was this whole standoff, almost like a TV drama. Will he, won't he? And he finally, the question is whether he gave himself up or whether he was pressured. but he went to jail essentially unlike, I would say, in the early hours of Thursday morning, and he's been in jail ever since. And then some of his supporters, they decided to protest to ask that he be released, as if the president of the country has the right to intervene in the legal process. And that's now morphed into a basically looting of private businesses in mainly two parts of the country, KwaZulu-Natal, not just in the big cities, but I understand also in a lot of the small towns, and then in some parts of Gauteng province, which is around where Johannesburg is. So essentially in parts of 2 of South Africa's 9 provinces, there's been a lot of looting. And so people are trying to understand this. Is this about Zuma? Is it something else? I think I read something earlier today that said probably the best answer is that there is no one answer. It's inconclusive. But we're curious to hear from people who watch politics here. As I said, I'm just visiting, so I'm not going to pretend to know everything. I'm just learning. I did learn that like Twitter is not the way to figure this out.
Not at all.
Not at all. Like I'm not going to learn anything from Twitter. Unfortunately, and I hope Will says something about this, and so does Alex, I think that there's an absence. The left is, I haven't seen much from kind of left-wing voices, and it might be that the left is being marginalized within South Africa's public sphere. In fact, somebody asked me right when I got here, and I phoned up a friend, and he said, can you figure out for me what is going on with the public sphere? Like who's got the loudest voice? Who's the most influential? Because he lives here, but he told me that it was very difficult for him to figure that out. In any case, this is just to set up that if you watch TV, there are these dramatic scenes of people breaking into malls. Malls are burning. Again, I'm not at this point. I'm not trying to say what my own opinions are about these things. I'm just describing it. Anyway, Will.
I mean, what you've described is correct, and from the moment Zuma was arrested, his political allies and his family took to Twitter basically to incite. So they sent out these clarion calls, calling on their supporters to shut down the country, to demand Zuma's immediate release, and to effectively make the country ungovernable. Evidence is there. It's on social media. It's not only his family and political allies, but the whole ecosystem of online profiles which support Zuma and the political project that he represents, the so-called radical economic transformation faction of the African National Congress, whose main goal effectively is to use radical rhetoric as a pretense for corruption, for creating pathways for accumulation and the ascent of the black bourgeoisie in South Africa. Their problem is that the South African economy still remains dominated by South Africa's white minority, whereas they feel like it should be dominated by the black capitalist class. So there was incitement online. There was protests that began over the weekend, which had a very clear character of being about support for Zuma. There were trucks burnt down on the N3 leading to Durban, which is the national freeway through which most freight vehicles travel. And so this over the weekend was very clearly violence that was being coordinated by Zuma supporters. But then something started to happen at the beginning of this week, and then I think this is when things get a little bit more complicated, is that the riots developed a mass character and was not only sort of a matter of trying to cause commercial disruption, but being rooted in communal outbreaks of rioting and looting. So as Sean was saying, supermarkets being raided, food being appropriated and distributed amongst people. And so there's very much an underlying condition of mass poverty, mass desperation, mass joblessness, which has caused people to participate in the looting. so as to access the means of survival. Because an important thing to understand in South Africa, and this is something that publications like Amandla and Africa as a Country write about all the time, is that South Africa is an unviable society. It's got an immense concentration of wealth at the top layers, completely insufficient state support, and during the pandemic, that's been the case as well. So as Sean was saying, level 4 was announced, and despite harsher lockdown restrictions falling into place, the state announced no support whatsoever for the mass of poor in South Africa. More than, I think, half the population live below the poverty line. Unemployment rate is approaching 50%. And this has been the case from the beginning of the pandemic. And so such conditions are dire for the majority of people. They are really dire, they are really intense and tragic. And so this would be something that provides proximate cause to not only participate in looting, so as to access goods that you need to survive, but as an explosion of outrage, as an explosion of despair, as an explosion of hopelessness. And it's continued, and there's a question of to what extent is this something that is coordinated by Zuma loyalists in order to bring disruption, so as to force through political concession from the Ramaphosa administration in favor of Zuma, and to what extent is this something that is organically developing, building a mass character, and spontaneously erupting. And some instances, it looks like it's the latter, i.e., this is mass rioting that is emerging organically based off conditions of deprivation. And some instances, it looks like it's being coordinated by nefarious forces behind closed doors, just given how effective that coordination is, given, for example, footage of whole warehouses being attacked and seeing fleets of cars surrounding those warehouses, more than 20,000 people on site in order to raid these goods. And so, of course, the question really is, what is to be done? Is this something that can be redirected and channeled into a broader mobilization against austerity, for the provision of public services, and for the state to roll out mass support, such as through a basic income grant? Or is it something that might just get more and more reactionary? Might it devolve into intercommunal racial violence? There's been a massive reaction, for example, from small business owners, middle-class South Africans, who have armed themselves and said that we're not going to let looters pass through our neighborhoods. It's been heavily racialized. Footage of some squatter camps in certain cities